Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. He's an incredible actor. He's a friend. He's a guy who's got a new movie out. It's called Reagan. It is Nick Searcy. Nick, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Joe. Nice to be here.
Are you scared for the next week and a half because they're starting to try to drop bombs on Trump? It's not like it's going to work, but they're trying their level best to pretend he's nuts, he's Hitler, he's a fascist, he's all these things. Hopefully, it's too little, too late, right?
Oh, well, they're so desperate. I mean, the stuff that they're saying about him, the stuff that they're dropping is just ludicrous. I mean, it doesn't even pass the smell test. And every time Kamala Harris makes a public appearance, she completely humiliates herself. So I don't think it's going to work. I don't think their tactics are going to work.
Well, we're seeing, like from last night on CNN, that this is why they kept her hidden. They were like, we can't let her out. And now they've taken Obama out of retirement. And Obama makes the mistake of telling black people what they have to do. I mean, they're in such disarray on that side. Yet, Nick, there are tens of millions of people, some watching and listening to us right now, who are still going to vote for that side. Can you figure it out? I can't figure it out.
Well, the fact of the matter is, Joe, there's only one person running for president, and that's Trump. Yeah. And the vote is either Trump or not Trump because she's nothing. She's just an empty suit. She's a puppet. And so they're voting for the party. They're not voting for her because she's nothing. She's obviously can't do the job. And so the vote is either going to be Trump or not Trump. That's it.
No, I think 100%. I think you nailed it. I don't think anybody, well, if you talk to them and say, well, what is it about Kamala Harris that you like? They don't have anything. And you're right. It's not Trump. Well, what policy did she push either as DA or the AG or the vice president? Well, it's not really that. It's that she's more presidential. Nick, do you know what more presidential means? Because I still don't understand that. Even from the first time that he ran and won, they were like, I just wish he'd be more presidential. Well, what else should he do to be more presidential?
Well, when the mainstream media says more presidential, they basically mean more like a leftist, more like us.
Gotcha.
And that's really it. I mean, even if you ask her, like, what's the biggest difference between you and Joe Biden? She'd say, well, I'm not Donald Trump.
She also said, I'm not Joe Biden. I think on one of the late night shows that nobody watches. It is Nick Searcy. Go and check out Reagan, the movie. It is it Reagan.movie to go there to go download it soon and watch it and all that?
Yeah, it's the Reagan the movie on Twitter, and I think it's ReaganMovie.com. Yes.
You know, I've had Dennis Quaid on, and when I had him on, I talked to him about movies that he did like in the 90s, that I remember you did this and you did that. And then, of course, The Dog's Life, you've got that. I didn't see him as Reagan. I just didn't. First of all, I don't think he's big enough. Secondly, he doesn't look like him. And then I watched the movie, and I went, well, wait a second. I don't even know that it's Dennis Quaid anymore. He has the mannerisms down. He has what appears to be Reagan's thoughtfulness. And as a guy who's 58 years old, I remember voting. I think I voted for Reagan the first time I ever voted in 1988. I was well, actually, probably in 1984. I just turned 18. Right. So I see in Dennis Quaid all of those characters that he's been up till now, and then I just saw Ronald Reagan for the rest of the movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dennis did a wonderful job. He portrayed Reagan without doing an impression of Reagan, which I thought was important because that can easily slip into being cartoonish or sort of a caricature.
Right.
But he really captured the sort of decency of the man, and that's what I think is so moving to audiences that see this movie. Is like so many times Reagan, and especially the way he's been depicted in the press by the media, they treated him as badly as they treat Trump. And to sort of have a movie that shows you who this man really was and how he conducted himself and how he functioned with the people all around him is very powerful. And to a person, everyone who's seen the movie says to me that the thing they weren't expecting was how moving it is.
And I think we kind of need that. The remembrances of Reagan, the real remembrances, are that guy that was portrayed in the movie. Those who want to make him some weird caricature that somehow had something to do with AIDS or he was bad and he hated this or he hated that, none of that stuff is true. Yeah. And to do a movie that really does give... when I watch a movie, because you can't really put 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 years into 2 hours, but when I watch a movie, I want to walk away with a feeling, a sense of what I should have learned from it. Right. And I got what I remembered from the 80s when I enjoyed Ronald Reagan as our president. Is that always the goal of a movie, that people walk away knowing you can't really encapsulate 80 years in an hour and a half, but you want them to walk away with the sense of who the guy was?
Yeah, well, I think they did try. I mean, I think the first edit of the film was over 3 hours
Oh,
long,
wow.
and
Okay.
unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that went by the wayside was James Baker's stuff, which is who I played. But yeah, I
Right.
think they did try to cram as much of it in there as they could, but they did a good job of distilling it down to the really important stuff and making the movie, something that hits you in the heart, not just in the head.
It's Nick Searcy. Go to nicksearcy.com and go check out everything that he does. Make sure you go and get the Reagan movie, Reagan.movie, right now. When you depict somebody who's a real guy like James Baker, instead of depicting somebody who's a fictional character, do you approach it differently as an actor? Do you have to study that guy, his mannerisms, what he said, how he acted? Because you can't put any of your thoughts in it. It's got to be what he would have done.
Well, I read his book. I watched as much tape on him as I could get. There's not an awful lot of tape on James Baker, just a few appearances on talk shows here and there and a speech here and there. So, but you just try to capture the sensibility of a person and how he operated in the world. And then after you get that sense, then I just sort of put myself into it. What would I have done if I was James Baker, kind of thing. So.
Now, again, I mean, anything you do, I believe you in whatever it is that you're doing. I believed you as James Baker in this too. What's interesting about that time, and you and I guess we're about the same age, in 40 some odd years ago, when Reagan took office, when he got us back from the malaise of Jimmy Carter, when he showed strength on the world stage again, where we'd been weak for 4 years, and then before that we had Ford, and before that we had Nixon. It was just a mess. Reagan comes in, and he basically said, love the country and we'll go in the right direction. And that was okay. Not only was it okay, it was galvanizing. I think it didn't matter who you were. We realized that we agreed on about 80% of stuff. Today, I think we still agree on 70 or 80% of stuff, but the stuff we don't agree on is what the left seems to be highlighting in a sense of division. Can you talk a little bit about, and again, in your true life recollection and then doing the movie, how Reagan, I mean, am I right that he re-galvanized us as we love the country, nationalism is good, nothing wrong with loving the USA?
Yeah. Well, you think back at Reagan's big slogan was "Morning in America,"
Right.
right? And so that's not that much different from "Make America Great Again." It is that sort of like there's nothing wrong with being proud of your country. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make your country the most prosperous country it can be. And there's nothing wrong with patriotism. And I think you're seeing the parallels not only with those slogans, but with the way Reagan was hated was very similar to the way they've treated Trump. And when I first saw the final cut of the movie opens with the assassination attempt on Reagan.
Right.
And it was right after the first assassination attempt on Trump. And the parallels between that just hit me. It's like, wow, this is happening again.
It is. It's almost the exact same thing. They both were shot. Trump had a second assassination attempt. I mean, and at the end of the day, we're now at that same inflection point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why it's so important. I think it took a long time for Reagan to come out because of contractual things and different things. We shot the movie almost 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it could not have come out at a better time, I think. I mean, I think it came out at exactly the right time. I think it was providential. This movie is so important because when you watch this movie and you see how Reagan loved this country, to me, it parallels how Trump loves this country.
I couldn't agree more. And how you love the country.
Yeah.
How I love the country.
Yeah.
It's Nick Searcy. Go to nicksearcy.com. Go to Reagan.movie. Who's watching the movie? It was estimated to come out with about $5 million. The opening day was over double that. It was $10.3 million. Is it people of our age range and our generation going back to remember what it was like then? Is it a new generation that's gotten lies about Reagan to see who he really is? Who's seeing it, do you think?
I think it's probably mostly the older crowd that is going to see it, but I think that's just a symptom of the movie business in general. It's hard to get anybody but children to go to a movie theater anymore. I mean, it's like people that are grown adults that have busy lives. They just go, I can watch it at home. I don't have to spend $50 on popcorn.
Right.
And so it's hard to get people to go back to the theater. And that's what makes Reagan's box office take all that much more impressive. I mean, it's amazing that I think it went over 30 million so far. So it did well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying day one, it did over 10 million, which was more than double what the estimates would be. It's being panned by critics, and in some sense, that's a good thing, no?
Absolutely. Whenever a critic pans a movie, I go, I'll probably like that one. They came out against Megalopolis, and I was like, okay, I got to go see that. But yeah, of course they're going to pan a Reagan movie that doesn't portray him as a monster, because that's what they want to think of him. They want to think that any conservative president is some kind of a killer, a hateful monster that needs to be vilified. And so, of course, they're going to pan it. Of course, they're going to say this is terrible.
Yeah, the only Reagan movie I can think of other than this was when Brolin played Reagan, and they had some lines in there that were just made up, completely fictional to make him look like an absolute monster, things that just never happened. But I think their mindset is, Nick, that plays well because he was conservative. I think they forget that all the unions voted for Reagan. He won every state except for Minnesota because Mondale was from Minnesota. This was a guy that wasn't only popular with people like you and me who tend to be more conservative. He was popular because Americans wanted their lives back, and they felt like they didn't have that with Jimmy Carter.
And I think that's what we're seeing now. I mean, I think the rise in Trump's popularity and his rise in the polls lately are people just looking at him and going, that guy is smart and he's having more fun, and life was much better when he was president. Things weren't so expensive, and that Kamala person is a moron. So I think more and more people are just sort of, they're it's just common sense. It's like, you don't want that person. You don't want Kamala Harris negotiating with foreign leaders. You just don't. She can't even negotiate with Anderson Cooper.
Listen, and she had somebody who was completely on her side, in her pocket, just like with Jake Tapper and so on. But she just doesn't have it. Whatever it is, and again, will there be a woman president? Sure, probably at some point. Will there be a black woman president? Absolutely. Why not? An Indian woman president? Absolutely. Does it have to be this one? No. Because as you said, there's an empty suit there. And when you look somebody in the eye and say the people are concerned about the price of groceries, and she's talking about price gouging, and there's no proof whatsoever. A study was just done. There's no price gouging going on. What are you talking about? Yeah. I mean, that's somebody who's so disconnected, who's just been told, run, we'll get you in, then we'll do the... Who do you think's running it, Nick? Is it Obama, do you think?
Well, it
is there a cabal?
I'm sure he's part of it. I think it's a larger operation than that. But yeah, I'm sure he's part of it. But basically, they just want a figurehead in there. That's why they wanted Biden in there. And as far as I'm concerned, they stole that election and installed him. And that's what they're going to try to do again. It's just that this time I don't think they don't have COVID on their side,
right?
And I don't think they can steal enough. I think that she is such a terrible. She's even worse than Biden.
I mean, that is saying so much.
That's amazing.
But you're right. How do you think they got him out of the way? Now we're just talking like a couple of guys. How did they get him out of the way? Do you think there might have been, just opinion, might have been a 25th Amendment threat? Hey, if you don't get out of the way, we're going to get you out of the way.
I think with Biden, he is so compromised in so many ways, with Hunter Biden, with the money he's taken from China, the money he's extorted from all these foreign leaders. They just basically said, you're going to go. And if you go, we'll let you keep all the stuff you stole. And if you don't, we're going to ruin you.
Wow.
So, that's the way they did that.
50 some odd years in Washington, and he was, at the table, and they took that seat away from him in 2 seconds. And I think you're right. I don't think she's at the table. I think that she's the figurehead. But this is somebody who was so unlikable by her own party that you had 1.9% supported her in the primaries back in 1999. She dropped out before Iowa. Now they just hand her the mantle. How is that even legal? And they say we're against democracy.
Well, it's not. I mean, there's nothing democratic about the way the Democrat Party functions. Even now, I've heard speculation that she's so bad they might try to take her out before the election and put somebody else in there. I say that to
How
people,
do they do that?
And they go, that can't happen. I go, you're talking about the Democrat Party. They don't care about rules or laws. They don't care about any of that.
Can you imagine, though? I mean, already she hasn't gotten one vote for president ever in her life, and she's the nominee. He got 14.5 million votes, and all those voters were told, doesn't matter what you voted for, we're going to give you what you get. Can you imagine with less than 2 weeks left if they just installed somebody, a Gavin Newsom or somebody? Honestly, the country would be over at that point.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me, Joe. I swear that there's nothing that I would put past them. They will do anything. And we've seen that from the assassination attempt. We see that from their continuing demonization of Trump, saying that he's Hitler and all this. Like, they are begging for somebody to go out and do something violent.
100%.
I don't put anything past them. They'll do whatever it takes.
Amazing actor, amazing American, Nick Searcy. Go to nicksearcy.com, and it's Searcy. And also go to Reagan.movie. I would be remiss to not bring up January 6th with you because you did that great documentary. Do you feel good that when Trump gets back in, those who didn't riot, those who didn't vandalize, those who took a selfie, at the Capitol that day, who are serving now 3 years in prison, and some people don't even have a court date yet. I mean, do you feel good that he's going to at least give them a reprieve? They have no rights, Nick. They're sitting behind bars with no rights.
I hope he pardons every single one of them. That is my prayer. I know so many. I've talked to so many of these people about what they actually did that day and how the judges and the prosecution lied about what they did that day. And they're serving time for, these are people that have never been arrested for anything before in their lives.
Right.
And they're serving 3 years in prison for walking into the Capitol building and taking a selfie. It's ridiculous. And I believe Trump will pardon these people, and I hope he does.
And I like that he's saying that he's going to, and then they lie and say he wants to pardon the people that did an insurrection. Nobody's been charged with insurrection ever, and it's not going to start now. It's Nick Searcy. Nick, what else are you working on? I want people to go and check it out.
Well, there's a show on Netflix called The Perfect Couple that I've got a pretty good little role in. And there's a book that I've released called Justify This. You can find it on Amazon. Justify This.
Okay, Justify This. It's Nick Searcy. Go to nicksearcy.com. Go to Reagan.movie. If you haven't seen it yet, you can start getting, I guess you could do it video on demand starting November 1st. So a week from tomorrow as we're doing the interview, Blu-ray and DVD is going to be available later in November, and you can do the digital download now, I guess, by going to Reagan.movie. That's what they do?
Yeah. You can go there and get the movie right now.
Love everything you do. I love how you love America. Come back again soon, Nick. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. Good to see
brother.
you.
We'll talk to you soon. We're back after this. Stay right here.